Genesis 8:4. And the ark rested on the seventh month, and the seventh day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. Sometimes we just need to rest and realize, take a break and realize what God said. This happened. Noah and them on the ark, just being there, thinking, this just happened. Said it would. They had to realize, completely, be reassured, because they already knew that he was in complete control. Hosea 2:5 2 through 10, 3 through 10. Yeah, Hosea 5:3-10. I know Ephraim and Israel is not hid from me. For now, O Ephraim, commit your whoredom, and Israel defiled. Now, Ephraim represents Israel as a large part. You had the southern kingdom, Judah, which was represented by Judah and Benjamin. Then you had Israel, which was the 10 remaining. But Ephraim was a big portion of it, and Ephraim was the section where the pagan idol worship was the most. This whoredom he's referring to is whoredom against God, which is idolatry. They had a false temple up in Ephraim, the biggest false temple of the area. They substituted false worship in place of God, which was their whoredom. All of Israel went up to Ephraim for this. Verse 4. They would not frame their doings to turn unto their God. For the spirit of the whoredoms is in the midst of them. They have not known the Lord. The Lord was theirs. The only problem is, because of them growing up, raising their kids, serving these idols, generations came that never knew who the Lord was. Today, the world lives in a way where they don't serve God, they don't know God. Some generations come where they never heard of God. They never heard of Christ. They've never heard of the Bible. And it's surprisingly a place that's so rooted in God could turn like that. But we see that with Israel. We see how they frame their doings. They routine their lives so much around pagan worship, against doing things that are not godly, and justifying them, that even if they've heard of God, their children and other people, they don't know who He is. Because if they did, they clearly would not be living that way. We have people in the world today that claim they know God, but because their actions are their actions, you can easily say that if they knew God, they wouldn't be living in the way they do, because He doesn't find it okay. They know of God, perhaps, but they don't know Him. We need to know the Lord and live by Him. Verse 5. And the pride of Israel does testify to His face, therefore shall Israel and Ephraim fall before their iniquity. Judah also fall with them. Now, Judah was a southern kingdom. Israel would fall. Judah would later fall. Judah, during their fall, would draw close to the Lord. They'd have a revival of their faith. Israel would just further fall away. Judah would come back from captivity because of their captivity. They'd come back stronger towards the Lord. It's interesting. because that's the way many people are. They proclaim God in front of people, but when they're in private and they live a certain way, they testify to His face. Sometimes oftentimes people who are hardest to reach are those that think they're okay. Israel thought they were okay because they were God's people. Yet, them being God's people was a condition of them being God's people. They were free to be God's people, but they weren't being God's people. Verse 6. They shall go with their flocks and with their herds to seek the Lord, but they shall not find Him. He has withdrawn Himself from them. Both did this when it was too late. They looked then for the Lord's help. The Lord doesn't want to be our last resort. Now, when true people showed faith and went to the Lord, He's there for them. We see in Daniel how the 3 men stood up for the Lord. They had faith, even though they were in exile, and the Lord was with them. But we don't turn to the Lord to avoid the punishment, and that's exactly why they were looking for the Lord, just to get them out of it. They weren't looking to the Lord to serve Him. They were saying, "Where are you? Get us out of this." They were looking for Him to serve Him. He would have gladly accepted them. He's not their scapegoat. He's their Lord. Needs to be. He wasn't going to be Lord to them. That wasn't what they were looking for. They were looking for someone who could get them out of it. They have dwelt treacherously against the Lord, for they have begotten strange children. Now shall a month devour them with their portions. So, they had to go through punishment. They did treacherous things against the Lord. Regardless of whether they turned back to Him, they were going to be punished. They married pagan women, and they had kids with them. These strange children are them. And these intermixing is going to cause problems, and it's going to be what destroys them, because it allowed pagan worship to be around to where they accepted it. Blow you the cornet in Gibeon, and the trumpet in Ram. Cry aloud, death even, after you, O Benjamin. Benjamin's from Judah. So this is particularly referring to Judah, perhaps here. Trumpet, these were to sign war. He's saying war's going to come. Alert it. Alert the people. Ephraim shall be desolate in the day of rebuke. Among the tribes of Israel have I made known that which surely shall be. Israel's captivity was a lot more longer. Judah's was bad, but there was no siege over Judah. Judah just got taken. Israel was slaughtered, and what was left was taken. Judah would turn back to God. The princesses of Judah were like them that remove the bound. Therefore I will pour out my wrath upon them like water. God wasn't easy with either one. But Judah ultimately looked to God, where Israel didn't. And that was the distinction between the two. We should look to God and not look elsewhere.